Hi everybody, welcome to a Careers in Financial Services talking heads, if you like, where we're going to be speaking to a couple of individuals who work in financial services in different areas. And this has been brought to you kind of in association with the Chartered Institute for Securities and Investment, and we are a professional body that work with those in the wealth financial planning areas. And we thought it would be good for a couple of our members, and specifically from the Manchester offices, to talk to you about what they do. So I'd like to introduce Mathew Whitehouse, or Matt Whitehouse, and Rebecca Jones, or Becky Jones, as she's also known. Matt works for Brewin, Dolphin, and Matt's going to talk a bit more about that soon. And Becky works at BNY Mellon. And Matt's a chartered wealth manager, and Becky Jones works as a compliance officer at that firm as well. And you can see Becky's got an award against her name there, an achievement there, which she will speak about. But Becky is also the president of the Manchester and Cheshire Committee for the CISI. So she has a role there as well in talking to members and organising members and promoting the Chartered Institute for Securities Investment. So before we speak to Matt and Becky about their roles and what they do, we just thought we would kind of put into context for you where Matt and Becky's roles fit into the kind of more general financial services profession. So this diagram that we've got up here on the screen just shows you three distinct areas of financial services. And if we come to the first on the right hand side, which is the back office, this is the kind of operational side of financial services. So this includes things like your accountancy, HR and training, what we would specifically call operations, which is kind of the admin function, administrative function of financial services organisations. We've got IT, PR and marketing. So these are the support functions that you would find in a financial institution, helping others, supporting others in doing their roles. Then if we come to the next area or segment on the left hand side, we have the middle office, and this is where Becky's role fits in within legal and compliance, and we've also got risk in there as well. And this has always kind of been around, but ultimately since 2008 and the financial crisis, there's been an even bigger focus on this area. And so it's really great that we've got Becky here to talk about something that is actually quite appealing as a career pathway to people, and has become more and more prevalent, as we say, since in the last sort of 12 years, 13 years. And then we've got the front office, which would be regarded more as client-facing roles, where people are speaking directly to customers and clients. And we can see we've got different areas in here. Insurance fits in here, financial planning, trading and sales, corporate banking, retail banking, which are kind of personal financial services. And we've also got asset management in there, which is the management of investment funds like pensions and things like that, which the general public do have access to invest in. And also we've got the area of wealth management, which is where Matt fits in, and where he will talk about how his role works and what he does and how he advises clients. So that gives you an idea of where Matt and Becky fit into the financial services profession. Just a very quick introduction to the different areas that you might find there. So we're just going to stop presenting these slides now, and we are going to ask, so we can see Matt and Becky's faces properly now up on screen. We're going to ask Matt and Becky a series of questions about their roles and their careers and what they've been doing to date. So hi Matt and Becky, thanks very much for taking the time to do this. How are you both doing?
Very good, thank you.
Very good, thank you. Thanks for taking this time.
No, it's really good that you can share your experiences with young people that potentially will look to go into their careers. And as we can see, both of you are very young, so much younger than myself. I'm jealous. Anyway, okay, so the first question I've got for you both, and we'll start with you, Matt, if that's okay, is I've already mentioned that you work for Brewin Dolphin. I nearly lost the plot there. But what does the firm actually do, Matt? Tell us a bit about generally what the firm does.
Sure. So despite the name Brewin Dolphin, we're nothing to do with beer or the sea. We're a wealth manager, and it's basically made up of two different bits of the business. So it's been around for like 250 years, and it's got roots to the start of the stock market. And for a long time, it was just a typical stockbroker, investment management. But then recently, it's moved into this more what they call financial planning world. So I find it quite useful to think about wealth management as sort of a car. So financial planning is it's the more wider financial picture. It's what kind of tires do you want on your car? It's how much space do you need in the car? What colour's your car? And it's how you want to get from A to B. And then investment management is the engine. It's what actually moves the car from part A to part B. So we've been doing that for probably about 20 years now. I mean, I haven't been doing it for 20 years. I've barely been alive for 20 years.
So Brewin Dolphin are actually a fairly quite a recent. Did you say the firm has been around for about 200 years? Did you say?
Yeah, just over 250 years.
Okay, so but it's only been the last 20 years that kind of the financial planning piece has become more prevalent in what you do. What can you give us a quick kind of difference between what financial planning is and what wealth management is?
Sure.
Put you on the spot there.
So financial planning is so essentially financial planning is a part of wealth management. So financial planning it looks at how to make the most out of sort of pension allowances on an annual basis. It's how to make sure that you're best positioned in terms of tax and what tax you pay. At the other side of your life, it also looks at succession planning. It makes use of trusts and making sure that money moves from one place to the next place without the government taking too much in tax. So you can not evade tax because that would be illegal, but you can help to move things around so you're more streamlined to achieve your own goals. And then wealth management sort of takes financial planning and it adds to it with sort of bespoke investment management. So it looks at everything, all bits of your finances, and it asks where do you want to be in, I don't know, 20 years or whatever. What do you want to achieve out of life? And then it'll build you a bespoke investment portfolio with everything that's sort of been agreed with you previously, depending on how much risk you want to take and whatnot. And then to assist in achieving that goal, you've got both arms working towards that goal.
Thanks very much, Matt. Thanks for that explanation. It makes perfect sense. So we kind of financial planning is kind of these objectives and goals that individuals are potentially working towards, and providing advice and help to be able to do that. So wealth management is more kind of this advice about how you might invest your money, and it's kind of the holistic. The financial planning piece is kind of the holistic approach to wealth management, isn't it? I guess is probably might be a simple way of putting it, but correct me if I'm wrong there.
No, that sounds about right. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks, Matt. Thank you for being so eloquent after I put you firmly on the spot there. So I do apologise. Becky, tell us a bit about BNY Mellon, what they do, and that would be great if you could. Thank you.
Yeah, so Bank of New York Mellon has been around for sort of 300 years, so it's similar in age really to Brewin Dolphin, and Bank of New York Mellon was obviously sort of established with a head office in New York, unsurprisingly, but we are actually a bank of about 50,000 staff, so we are global. We cover all the regions, so Asia, Pacific, so it's called APAC, Europe, Middle East, Africa, so the EMEA regions, and also all of the Americas. And Bank of New York Mellon isn't a traditional bank. It's something called a custodian bank. So like you see your retail banks like NatWest or Barclays on the high street, they offer things such as mortgages, but Bank of New York as a custodian doesn't do those type of services or offer those services. Instead, they protect clients' assets in their safe custody. And the slide that Matt showed before is actually really useful, because BNY Mellon really sort of does that whole piece, and it has that whole life cycle of a transaction, and it's all about being very safe. So we're not risky, we don't take many risks. We have to try and really look after our client, and our clients are things like pension funds and things like NatWest itself, as opposed to being the individual on the street like you or I. So we're very, very big in scale, and there are very many different elements in the bank. So if you were interested in things like operations, there are jobs there, but if you were interested in things like compliance, there are also jobs there as well. And in Manchester, for example, we have almost 1,500 staff, so you can see how big the sort of scale is. So it's a really fun place to work.
Great, thanks, Becky. So thanks, Matt and Becky, for introducing your firms and telling us a bit about that. So now let's come specifically to what you do as individuals in your role. So we'll come to you, Matt, first. So what is it you're doing? What's it like on a day-to-day basis? What sort of things you're doing on a day-to-day?
Sure. So I work in investment management, so the investment management side of wealth management, and essentially we'll talk to clients regularly. We'll try to understand what they want from their money. So if they've had an inheritance, or if they've saved for a long time or whatever, and they've got money that they want to invest and they want it to grow, we'll try to understand what is it they actually want the money for, and then we'll have a deep sort of analysis on how much risk they want to take, or they're willing to take. We want to know how much risk they need to take, so depending on their assets, or what other goals, and then also how much risk they can take. So if the portfolio was to go to zero, because there's always risk involved in investing, or if it was to drop significantly, would that have a big impact on their life? So to do that, once we've sort of analysed everything and we've looked at their position, we can then build a strategy based on the amount of risk that we've agreed with, and then once we have a strategy, we'll have what they call an asset allocation. So we'll buy assets around the world, including shares in companies, bonds, which is buying companies' debt, some commodities and sort of commercial property, and alternative funds such as sort of hedge fund sort of funds, and we'll build a portfolio, so a bunch of these assets together, which has a certain level of risk that we've agreed, and then hopefully that will go on to grow and achieve their objectives over the long term.
Great, thank you. Thanks very much. And how about yourself, Becky? What do you do on a day-to-day basis? What's your role?
So in banking, there are 3 lines of defence. So there's the first line of defence, which is the actual business and operations, sort of doing the processes and looking after the clients directly. So they're the people that own the risk and do sort of all of the doing. And then in the second line of defence, there's compliance, and there's also risk management, which Matt mentioned at the beginning, sort of sat in that middle office place. And in the second line, we're required to be completely independent from the first line to try and challenge and oversee what they're doing. So as Matt mentioned earlier, with the sort of financial crash and things like that, we really want to make sure that what we're doing as an industry is in compliance with regulations and has the appropriate culture, and that, we are doing what we should be doing, basically. So, and then there's also the third line of defence, and that's internal audit, and they oversee and challenge all of us. So they can oversee and challenge us in compliance. So on a day-to-day basis, I deal mostly with projects. So at the moment, I'm working on a new regulation, and the implementation of that regulation is towards the end of this year. So I'm working with the first line in the business to make sure that they comply with all of the laws outlined and all of the articles and the requirements that there are. And in doing so, I am a business partner, so I work with them and collaborate with them, but I also have to provide that step back and really look at what they're doing, and also provide sort of advice and interpretation on the law as well. So I work really closely with legal as well, because they obviously do all of the interpretation of the regulations, and then we in compliance support them. And then risk management also work with us to make sure that the controls that we're implementing are going to be sufficiently robust to mitigate any risk of potential breaches. So yeah, it's very varied work, because there are obviously new regulations all the time, and we have to make sure that for the different legal entities in the different jurisdictions that we're complying with the regulation.
Great, thank you. It sounds like, to be honest, it sounds like both of you have got very varied roles. You know, Matt, you're dealing potentially with clients on a day-to-day basis, and Becky, you've got this ever-changing landscape of regulations, and so it just seems like your roles are never static. It's never something that you're kind of doing the same thing day in, day out. There's something different all of the time that's going on externally that's impacting on what you do. So fair to say, it sounds like, I mean, I think there's always a kind of perception that financial services can be quite dull, and it's all about numbers, but it's not, is it? It seems to me like it's about people, understanding how people think, how they react, and the impact of things like laws or regulations on how people work. So yeah, I would say sounds like very dynamic, but also very interesting what you both do.
I would agree completely. Yeah, it's very, very varied. And I think one of the key attributes that you do need in financial services is sort of that interpersonal skills, the communication, stakeholder management. So being able to work collaboratively with people. So Matt's obviously talked about having clients and having that face-to-face contact with people who are earning the firm money. So it's important that you have that relationship. But I also need to have the relationship with my clients, essentially, who are the business, to keep them abreast with, you know, what they need to do to comply. So I have to work very well with them, so they trust me, and that we can form that good relationship together.
Great, thank you. So we'll come to our third question. You're both doing well so far. It's a bit like a mastermind, isn't it? So I wouldn't say it was not Magnus Magnusson anymore, is it? I'm showing my age, right? I digress. Matt, how did you get to where you are today in your career journey? So how have you got to the position you find yourself in at the moment?
Well, so after coming on board to Brewin Dolphin, obviously it's a massive change from what I was doing before. I was in car rental before, so coming into the finance world, there is a lot of acronyms and a lot of things you need to get your head around. So for the first sort of 6 months, you're trying to just find your feet, and everybody at the start feels a little bit overwhelmed. So it's getting over that. It's trying to understand the processes, which are ever changing, and they can be quite complex. But you know, there's always people in the business to help you out and to make sure you're moving in the right direction. So once you kind of found your feet, then you can start speaking to clients a little bit. You can start doing sort of the more simple tasks and queries that they send, and then you move on to start doing your exams. So depending on where you want to be in the business, you may have to take more exams. I mean, taking exams has always been quite daunting to me, and I was terrible at them in school, and I used to hate them. And I remember doing my GCSEs and having like 15, 16 exams over 2-week period, and thinking, why would anybody choose to do more exams? But all that stuff back then, I think out of 15, 16 exams, there was maybe 2 or 3 that I didn't mind studying for because I was interested in them. And one of those areas is economics and around that, like business and some finance. And I just find that whole world fascinating. And someone told me once that economics is like a mass study of people, and it's the stock market is essentially a voting machine of what people want to see in the short term future. And whenever something happens in the world, the stock market moves to show what people are thinking about that, and that is, to me, very, very fascinating. So taking these exams was totally different. Taking these exams is it's something that you can really get your teeth into, and it's only one exam at a time. You have people in the office that are more than happy to help you, and I'm sure it's the same at BNY. And the material they give you is great. They send me down to London every now and then to study, it's was just fascinating. And then by the time I'd come round to the exam, it felt like I put the effort in, and you do have to put your effort in. You do have to really concentrate and focus on these exams. But when you get to the exam, if you've studied enough, it's not that bad of an experience. So while I think I've done 11 exams now, and I'm sort of, although I've finished at 6. I didn't need to take any more than 6 exams. I've decided to continue because I am enjoying the material, and I've never been in a position where I've enjoyed learning about stuff. So although I was quite bad at it at school, I actually really enjoyed this type of learning and these type of exams. So now that I've finished the 6 that I needed to do, I started to meet clients. So in the last sort of 12 months, I've been meeting clients, well, virtually, but meeting clients, and now that I'm sort of what they call on supervision. So if I'm supervised by someone who's totally qualified and has been through the ringer and all that, then I can start giving advice on their investment strategy, which is what I really want to do, and I want to be eventually good at that. So the next few years will look quite similar to that, and hopefully just becoming less supervised over the time.
Thanks, Matt. It's nice to know that. Again, it kind of it echoes the responsibility that people have to their clients. You've gone into this being trained, and you haven't just been sort of let go and get on with it. It's this kind of gradual process of picking things up, doing your learning, and as you say, you're constantly doing exams. And this is the thing to say to young people, is that you never stop learning. It doesn't stop whether you're at school, at university. You're often doing qualifications in any role that you might have. There's an expectation that you continue that professional development, so to speak. It's really good. And Matt, did you go to university, or did you go into work after leaving school?
Yeah, I went to Manchester Metropolitan. I actually did a course in advertising because when I come out of sixth form, I knew I didn't really like studying, so I wanted to choose something that I knew I wouldn't have to have my head in a textbook for, and it could be a bit more practical. But then I'd always had a sort of love for finance and economics, but I'd never thought that I was smart enough to do it. And then one day I just thought, I had an opportunity to do it, and I just thought, I'm going to give it a crack. And once you're really interested in something, the actual studying for it becomes way easier.
Yeah, absolutely. If you choose something you're passionate about, and you find it interesting, it does, doesn't it? And I think that's a key message actually to young people as well. Do something you enjoy. Don't do something because you feel like you're pressured, or I should do that because it will get me to X place. Do something that you actually really enjoy at university, and even in your job as well. And it sounds you're very passionate about speaking about what you're doing, and the fact that it's also changed your perception of learning is quite well, obviously sounds like a big thing for you as well. It wasn't something you particularly enjoyed when you were younger, but now it's practical. It makes sense in terms of what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. So that's great to hear. So thanks very much for that, Matt. So what about yourself, Becky? How did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, so I actually did economics at A level as well, and found that very interesting. But I went on to university and did a law degree. And after I did my law degree, I came out of there having completed various bits of work experience, doing quite a lot of volunteer work, really sort of trying to expose myself to the life of a solicitor. And I wasn't 100% sure. So I spent a year after that working in events, organising corporate events for corporate clients. So that was a bit of a random steer, but it was great to actually work in a commercial environment, to see what the working world actually entailed. So thereafter, I worked there for a year, and I did decide, actually, I really want to give it a go being a solicitor. So I went back to university and did a postgraduate course to be a solicitor, which is called the Legal Practice course at LPC. And that was an extremely difficult course. It was a lot of exams, sort of like Matt was talking about. But for me, I didn't find it that enjoyable. I found it very, very stressful and very hard. So I came out of there having, again, tried to do a bit more work experience and things like this in solicitors' offices and things like that. And I then decided, I'm going to have a look into alternative career options with a law degree and the skills and qualifications that I've got. And compliance came up as one when I was doing my research, and I'd never heard of compliance before. But having an interest in financial services, in the industry, I thought, this could be something that would be really good. And there's a lot of career progression that you can do. It's a solid career as opposed to just a job. There's a lot of steps you can take. So when I did my research, it said that you needed sort of foundational experience in the industry. So I got a temp job at BNY Mellon as I started, and I started at, sort of the most junior point. I was working in operations, and I did that for 2 years before moving into compliance. So I've now been in compliance for almost 5 years now, and I love it. It's great. It's definitely the right course for me. So I'm really pleased that I decided to follow this path.
Great, thanks, Becky. It's interesting to note as well that you both did something at university. That I mean, obviously, Becky, the compliance side still has that kind of legal link, but but not completely. You didn't study anything finance related specifically. Yeah. And then for you, Matt, it was advertising at university. Again, no link, but there kind of is in a way that advertising is about psychology, people, how to reach people in a certain way, or how to get messages across. So there is a kind of link there. I guess what I'm trying to say is that to get into financial services, there doesn't need to be this prescriptive route that you take in terms of I have to go to university and study X, Y, or Z. I'd agree. That doesn't seem to be the case speaking to you both.
Yeah, there's definitely transferable skills that you can pull out of qualifications. So obviously mine was quite specifically transferable with sort of legal analysis and interpretation of law, but the actual function of a solicitor versus a compliance officer can be quite different. And obviously what you're dealing with is different being in financial services as opposed to, a commercial solicitor or property solicitor or something. It's very different.
Yeah, Matt, you didn't fancy a role in marketing within a financial services firm?
I mean, it would have been interesting for sure, but I mean, at university doing advertising, it was good, and I did enjoy it, but I just knew it wasn't for me. It was you have no idea. Most of the time, you have no idea if something works or not. You just throw something out into the world, and maybe sales go up, maybe they don't, but you don't really know. It's difficult.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and just thanks so much. It's just interesting to hear how you both got to where you are. So next question is, what do you enjoy most about what you do? So Matt, if we come to you first, what do you enjoy most about your role?
Well, obviously, like I mentioned earlier about economics being a study of mass people, and the stock market, how it moves, is similar to like a voting machine. And I love people, and I love psychology, which maybe, like you mentioned, the link between advertising and finance. So I really like that. But in terms of a day-to-day basis, finance is really it's a complicated world if you're just dipping your toe into it. If you're not doing it every single day, you could look at it and think, no way. But for me, someone like, I wouldn't say I'm particularly intelligent, but because I do it every single day, it's almost like I speak the language. And if you can speak the language, you can help somebody to understand. It's like having a personal translator with you in a world. And a lot of people see finance as, after the financial crash, it's like a deceitful world. So it's nice to be like, there are some dodgy characters out there, but luckily, hopefully I'll be able to avoid those from my experience and the backing of the firm. So I love the feeling of helping someone, and I think someone's finances, which have such a sway over the rest of everything in their life, if you can help them with their finances, you're helping them with more than just being able to purchase a car in the next few years. You're helping them potentially retire or protect their family from potential issues, and hopefully you can push them up to a level where they can retire with a life that they never even thought they could have.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so it's that ability to be able to help people, as you say, on a day-to-day basis that really sounds like it's the big thing for you. It's and that ability to, as you say, almost be a translator for people. It's kind of like it's like the Matrix. You can see you only see numbers, but actually through it all you see patterns and you see how things work. So that's really interesting to hear. It's kind of, yeah, and almost another language, but once you get used to that, it becomes almost, you're always learning, but it's almost second nature and you enjoy that. So no, thanks for that. That's really insightful. What about yourself, Becky? What do you most enjoy about what you do?
Obviously, having done law and in my profession now, I do have to read a lot of regulations. So I do really enjoy the analysis and research and, sort of reviewing those regulations, interpreting and trying to apply them to a situation. So I do find that quite interesting. And I really enjoy being sort of a SME, like, a subject matter expert on something. So, for example, at the moment, I'm really focusing on outsourcing as a topic and looking at outsourcing regulations. So it's really exciting and enjoyable to be sort of, someone who people can come to with questions, someone who people depend on for guidance and advice. So as I was mentioning before, sort of having those relationships is really enjoyable because you really work together and you build connections and you're able to sort of support each other. So you work very much as a team, and I think that's the most enjoyable part of my role.
Interesting. There's similarities there, isn't there, between you? It's about helping people. So you like to help internal colleagues and everything else, and Matt's out there helping individuals with what they want to do with their money and achieving particular goals that they want to achieve. So interesting. Again, I think there's this notion. I think Matt said about, there's some shady characters is the perception of financial services, but actually got two people here who turn around and say it's not about me, it's about others, and I enjoy helping others because you've got that intrinsic. It's not about the money, which is what a lot of people again associate with financial services. It's actually about, I'm helping people and I'm making a difference to them. So that's really great to hear, because I think there is often that perception that it's all about the hard cash. Financial services is about long hours, which you probably do, but it's about big bucks. It's all about the money, and that is probably the furthest thing from what financial services is in the modern era. As you say, it's about the client. It's about people, and I think that's reflected well in what you both say you enjoy most about what you do. So that's really good to hear. I from a personal perspective, that's nice to hear. So great. Okay, so next question. You've told us what you most enjoy about what you do. What's the most challenging thing about what you do? Matt, what's that for you?
Well, last year is a really good piece of what is really challenging about our role. So last year with the pandemic, the stock market started falling like a stone, and if you're watching the headlines every single day, and all they're saying is it's going to be another recession, or it's going to be a double dip recession, or it's going to be a depression, and people are just thinking, oh my God, what is happening? And I mean, well, the truth is that we didn't know what was happening. We're not, virus experts, and it even seemed like the virus experts didn't even know what was really happening. So you've got all this chaos going on, and all you can do is try to let the client know that it's best to just not do anything, because if the market falls 20-30% and they think, oh my God, the world's going to hell, let's all sell our investments, it's never going to bounce back, let's sell our investments, and they've literally just lost 20-30% of their money. And if they've worked their whole life to get to this point where they might have a bit of a few £1,000 or whatever, and they're going to retire on this money, and they're really depending on it. If they do react like that, if they respond like that, they could lose. If they've got, I don't know, £200,000 in a portfolio, if the market drops 30%, they've just lost £60,000. And £60,000 is a if you've spent your whole life getting this money, it's significantly impacts their life. But all we can do is, using sort of our knowledge of history, and particularly obviously Brewin's got quite a long history, is that we can sort of say, while this specific thing has never happened before, things like this have happened before, and the market has reacted like this before, and it's always come back. And what actually happened after the pandemic was, I think it took 6 weeks from the 23rd of March to have a significant bounce back, and then sort of a couple of months later it totally recovered, and now the market's at brand new highs. You had Amazon come out with their earnings yesterday, and it's like 40-50% revenue has gone up, and it's like they're already a colossal business. How is there, you could never, if in March all this stuff was going on, if they sold their money, they would have missed out on sold their investments, they would have missed out on all this growth. And the actual last, say, 12 months has probably been one of the best years. I mean, I've seen in my career, I know that's only a 4-year career, but you would not have thought that when everything started kicking off. So it's just important to try to make sure that people don't make mistakes, and that can be quite difficult when you have people absolutely calling in panic, and seeing these headlines in the media do not help.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's interesting, isn't it, that the last year and a bit has been kind of this microcosmic. You've seen everything from the downs to the highs, and it's that year and a bit, and it's fantastic also that, I mean, you talk very passionately about it, Matt, and I think that's testament to how interesting you find it, and how keen you are on it. But it's interesting that kind of the firm then become this almost, it's like this calm, someone that brings calm to the situation, where we've been around for 200 years. Don't worry, it will be okay, just stick with it. We've seen this all before. Okay, we haven't necessarily seen a pandemic like this before, although you had Spanish flu, but we've had this before, and the impact on businesses and stock markets. Don't worry, it'll be all right. We've been there, we've done it. So you're kind of the firm, and you are kind of like the voice of reason for the client. And that again must bring back the psychological element that you talk about. Again, you speak passionately about that. So although it's a challenge for you as an individual in your role in an organisation, actually it's something that you guys thrive on, because it's kind of like, it's not a stress fest. It's, we know what we're doing. We'll take care of you. And again, it's kind of being that nurturing and protective, which again is, not necessarily the perception people have of financial services. It's always like, oh, they always act in their interest, they're always out to make money. So it's fantastic to hear. Great, thanks, Matt, that's really interesting. Becky, what about yourself? What's the most challenging thing for you in your role?
I mean, obviously some of the aspects of regulation are very technical, so that can be quite challenging. But I think one of the things that is quite difficult, particularly, and I think just in business in general, is sort of prioritizing and managing your time and workload. So Matt, you sort of mentioned before, sort of working long hours and things like that. And, to enable a work-life balance, which is so important at the moment, you really want to try and sort of make sure that you are prioritizing as you should be. There are obviously different needs. There's client needs, regulatory deadlines, different managers or senior stakeholders' expectations. So I think finding the balance is quite difficult, and prioritizing is difficult. So one of the things that I always try and do is really have an open dialogue with my manager to really make sure that I'm, prioritizing the right things, that we're on track for certain things, and communication with that is so important. So making sure that if someone does request something of you by a certain timeline, making sure that, you are realistic in the expectations, and that you're clear with management and stakeholders to explain exactly what you can do. So time management was something that was always stressed at school and at college, and I can't tell you how important it is. It really is important. And organizational skills, so really having a good hold and grip on what it is that you're doing, what it is you need to deliver. So I think it is challenging, but it's also really rewarding as well when you obviously get things right and you are delivering as you need to, and that's obviously reflected in sort of your conversations with management and the work and the output that you're doing. So it is challenging. Managing priorities and sort of stakeholder expectation is challenging, and I think that's something that will forever be the case. I don't think that's necessary. You can obviously practice these things and you will generally get better, but it isn't something that will go away.
No, that's I think it's really interesting that you raise the whole time management piece and getting the balance right in terms of your work and your own personal life, and that these are challenges that not just in your role, but in for most people, that's an issue, isn't it? As you say, and again, for young people, I guess to get kind of used to some of this, which is part of kind of modern day working life these days, especially now as we work during the COVID-19 pandemic, everyone's at home. Actually, I think that work-life balance has become even more important because you are now kind of accessible, not 24/7, but for past your working hours, people could contact you via things like Teams and what have you. So you're absolutely right. That is really important. And also the fact that you have all these different projects you're working on, you're working with different people, and it's prioritizing that, getting that right, getting things done, as you say, being organized, getting things done in the right order to make sure that you're reaching the objectives that you've got to get to. I would guess for young people that might be watching this that are still at school or at university, I guess the message is kind of anything you can do that where you get used to doing this, and the time management skills, organizational skills, whether that's part-time work or work of any kind, or those sort of things, take advantage of that and develop those, because they are really important no matter what job you do, really. So I think that's a really good challenging but a really important message there. So thanks, Becky, that's great. You've returned just in time, Matt, for the next question. So the next thing for you both is we're on our final few questions. The next question is, what is your greatest achievement so far let's say in your career? What's your greatest achievement?
Thanks. Sorry about that. My battery started flashing up with a low battery, and I knew that if I didn't run now, it would be the end. So I mean, the exams was the most daunting thing by far, and getting them out of the way of, and I did put a lot of work into them, but by the time the exam came around, they were really easy. Well, they wouldn't be relatively easy. They felt manageable, and it was comfortable taking the exam, and I've never had that experience before. So not only were I picking up these qualifications that were going to be really valuable in my career, I think I felt like I also learned something about doing what you love, and then that's something that's always stuck around now. So, if it's not something I love doing, I know that I won't commit to it. So, yeah, taking those exams and passing them all, and I didn't fail any exams, which is great news.
Congratulations.
Yeah, well done. Did you say you took 11? You've taken 11 so far.
11 so far. Got another one in a couple of months as well.
Good luck.
Are they CISI? Are they all CISI exams you've been taking?
So I mean, basically, like as I said, there's the investment management arm, and then there's the financial planning arm under the wealth management umbrella. So I've done the investment management ones. I'm now doing the financial planning ones. So I think it's the CII they're under.
The CII, yeah, sure, yeah. For those watching, you've kind of got CISI exams, Chartered Institute of Securities Investment in Financial Planning. There's something called the CFP. And then you've got the financial planning exams that are also part of what's offered by the Chartered Institute of Insurance. That fits under there. So there are kind of two pathways in financial planning that you can kind of go down from a qualification perspective. So, Matt, you've done CISI exams in the wealth management side, and so you're taking financial planning exams via the CII. So, yeah, interesting. You can take those routes. But, yeah, fantastic achievement, that, Matt. Well done. I think I would have been drowning in papers if that was me. I think I'd be in trouble. Thank you. What about yourself, Becky? What's your greatest achievement?
So you mentioned it earlier, but I have been added to the Northern Power Women's Future List. So this is a list. I think there's about 500 women on there now. So they tend to add 50 a month, and it's a list of future leaders and things like that. So it's a real I'm very proud to have been added to that list, but I was fortunate really to have achieved that. But the reasons that I have is predominantly my work with the CISI. So I volunteer, as does Matt Whitehouse, on the CISI committee for the Northwest and Manchester region. And through my volunteer work here, I've been appointed as the president of the committee. So I'm the youngest ever president of the committee, but also the second only female. And that's why I've sort of been recognised on the futures list. So doing sort of Matt was mentioning before about doing these extra things for time management, this committee responsibility that Matt and I do is entirely voluntary, and we do it because we both obviously really enjoy it, but there's so much that you can gain from doing things like this. So we on the committee work with about 14 other professionals from the city who sit on the committee. They all work in different firms. So we have exposure, we're able to network with them, and we also organise and facilitate continuous professional development sessions, so CPD events, and also social events. So we get to really network and learn with our peers. And we also have a young professional network, which is something you'd all be interested in, which is a network that's tailored to 18 to 35-year-olds. I'm sort of the lead ambassador for that, and Matt also represents the YPN as well for us in Manchester. And in that committee, we have a subcommittee of future leaders, which are sort of the younger professionals from different firms across the region. And we all meet and discuss and try and tailor specific events for that sort of audience. So things like this are a real great opportunity, but having now sort of received my being recognised for this work is really great, and I think that's definitely my greatest achievement.
Yeah, that's absolutely fantastic, Becky. Well done on that as well. Yeah, really great. And yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, that the CISI president role has helped kind of open that up, and it's great that you get recognition for that as well, because you know Matt knows as well as I do how hard you work on that, and again it's that ability to kind of do things outside of your role that actually gets that recognition of, even though you do within your role, but also the other opportunities that you've taken outside of that to develop yourself. And again, it goes down that whole route of lifelong learning, kind of getting yourself out of your comfort zone maybe a little bit, doing things outside of the norm, outside of the box. And again, that's a really good message for young people, is that when you've got opportunities like that, it's take them and enjoy it and thrive on it, and and actually use that to help develop you and enhance yourself. So I think that's fantastic, just as Matt has done with his qualifications. It's great. So fantastic achievements there from you both. So we're on to our last two questions. So the next question for you is, what does the future hold? And we'll come to you, Matt. So what do you see as the longer term, say 5 to 10 year picture for you, perhaps?
Oh, you're on mute.
That's embarrassing. Over the next sort of the very short term, I hope to come off supervision. So currently I'm doing my job, but in supervision. So it's just like having the stabilizers on. So get rid of the stabilizers, and then just basically start. I think I'll be given like a small group of clients that I can work with. So just becoming a very trusted advisor to these people, and sort of integrate myself into their lives, and just helping however I can, and then growing. So I hope to get more clients, and over the next 10 years, I hope to have a full client bank. Specifically, I work with sports people and business owners. There's some specialist teams in the office, and those are the two that I selected. I'm quite interested in sports, and business owners are quite fascinating people. They're just like fast and everything, and they think in a very specific way, entrepreneurs, and that's what I really like about them. And sports people are they tend to be quite disadvantaged in a lot of ways, because they commit everything to this sport and they learn about nothing else, and then they end up retiring at in some cases 30, 35 years old, and they have no idea what to do next. They've earned all their money in a 15-year period, and now they're like, well, what am I supposed to do now? So there's although you usually look at sports stars and footballers and think, oh, they've got it easy or whatever, but they've probably played football non-stop from the age of 15 years old, not learned anything else, have committed their whole life to this one sport that they're now retired from at the age of 30, 35, and if they get injured, maybe even sooner. So it's a great place to be able to help people and to help them plan for the future. And it's usually a rare trait that somebody at the age of 20, 22, whatever, or even younger has an ear for the future and sort of wants to start planning now to put in place for the future, especially if they are very well paid sports individuals, because they'll be seeing all this money coming in and they'll be thinking, I'm set for life, I don't need to worry about it. And then I think there's a crazy statistic out there where it's like 70% of footballers after they retire end up being bankrupt, and it's just crazy. They don't have the skills in place to do anything with all this money, even though they earn a lifetime worth of money in some cases a year or 2 years. And then on the entrepreneur side, it's once a company is big enough to benefit from finance services, they will they'll be swarmed by people. They'll be swarmed by everybody in the industry, and all these people are well intentioned and they all want to help, but you'll have 10, 15 people all saying the same thing. So what the plan over the next sort of 10 years is to sort of integrate myself into smaller businesses and new businesses and help them along the way. So then when they get to that bigger size, we can really help them to make the right decisions, and hopefully they'll trust me by then, and they'll trust me to do the right thing by them.
Interesting. You used the word trust. Is another kind of key thing in financial services, isn't it? It's trust, building that relationship, trust. Really important. Thanks, Matt. It's well, let's hope you can soon be let off the leash a bit more, and you can get your hands dirty a bit more one-to-one with the clients. And yeah, great stuff. Excellent. What about yourself, Becky? What does the future hold for you?
So in compliance, generally you are an individual contributor. So because you are sort of an expert in your area, you don't necessarily have to manage teams of people. But obviously, the higher you climb the ladder, you do have to then start assuming responsibility as a manager for certain people. So I really aspire to become a director sort of in the next 5 to 10 years. That would be great. And then thereafter, I would really like to become a regional head of my department, and then a global head one day. Possibilities are available working in a global firm. That would definitely be my aspiration.
Fantastic. Great. And I think it's again for people watching, having those kind of objectives and where you want to get to longer term is really important, because if you've got something to aim for, the chances are you will achieve it because you'll be working towards those goals. So I think that's really important, whether it's doing your GCSEs or doing your A levels or finishing your degree. They might be those goals, or you want to achieve a certain grade. But as you get into your career, it's kind of like, okay, where do I want to be in 5, 10 years? What am I aiming towards and working towards those goals? So thank you both very much for sharing those. And we come on to the final question, which is, if you were going to give one bit of advice to a young person starting out their career, what would that be? So Matt, we'll come to you first. What's the one bit of advice that you think stands out that you would give to someone starting their?
You're on mute again.
I used to sorry God I used to ask this question to people all the time when I was younger, and what's the best advice to give to someone that's starting, and they'd always tell me the same thing. And I think because I heard it so much, I never listened to it, and I ended up, like, it took me a really long time to do that, and if I'd have done it earlier, I might be way further ahead than I am now. But it's basically just find what you're really interested in, and just work as hard as you can at that. There's a saying, and it's if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life, and that's true. You see, some days I can work for 10, 12 hours, and I get home and I'm not tired. I'm not like like depressed, and I'm still happy and I'm still upbeat because in the day I'm doing it. Like I'm going to exist in that day for those 12 hours. And you know, if I wasn't in work, I'd probably be doing a bit of revision on the stock market or something. You know, something that I'd be interested in. So it doesn't seem like work. It's just it's a way for me to do what I like. And it wouldn't, and taking that a bit further, if you go into finance, and I mean, obviously, if finance is what you want to do, then choose finance. But whatever you do, try and pick something in that subject to get really good at. So if there's a section of finance that you want to get really good at, pick that and aim for that. So like some sort of what I've done with sort of sports people and entrepreneurs, you want to find something that you're really, really interested in, and then just spend all your time learning about that thing and becoming the best that you can be in that thing. Find the best person in that you can actually find, or YouTube or whatever. Find that person that does that and learn from them, and learn all their habits and learn what they do, and then be better than them ultimately. And then if you do that, the work will come to you. And if work comes to you, then you can pick and choose your clients, and then ultimately the money will follow, and that will open up more opportunities in your own life. And at the end, you'll have the money that you wanted to work at JP Morgan or whatever, and just do trading and kill yourself on the trading desks. But you'll also have a lifelong career that you're really proud of, and one that you love going into work. When it comes to that time where you need to retire, you'll think, I don't want to retire, I want to keep working, and you'll cut your hours down, you spend more time with your family or whatever, but you'll still have that love and need to do that thing when you retire, and you'll never work a day in your life.
Yeah, again, the passion comes through there, Matt. It's you really, but it's fantastic, because a lot of people you speak to will turn around and, oh yeah, it's work, but you live and breathe it. And I think that's, again, it's really important for those people watching to find something that you love and that you're interested in, and carve that out for yourself. What you're doing there is you've got this vision of where you want to get to. And I guess you probably hadn't always had that vision necessarily. It's because you found something that you're really enjoying and really passionate about. But I think that's a really, really good piece of advice there, Matt. So thank you so much. And what about yourself, Becky? What's the advice you would give to somebody?
Well, I think Matt's advice was brilliant, and I would really echo that. It's very inspiring, so thanks for that, Matt. But I think for me, what I've always done, and that has always benefited me, is doing the extra stuff. So, you know, when they say go the extra mile, and it's doing the work experience placements, it's doing that volunteer work, it's networking and going to those presentations that they put on outside of hours at uni and things like that, because those are the places where you'll meet someone else that you wouldn't have met before, or you'll develop a skill that you wouldn't have developed before in your normal activity. And those are the things as well where you can find your interests and what it is that motivates you. So the CISI for me fits in very well with what I do in the financial industry, but it also provides me with so much more and such a broader network, and it keeps me really motivated and interested. And you know, doing these extra things as well does get you that recognition, but it also helps you just develop both personally and professionally. So I'd really encourage people to try and be proactive, try and get yourself out there, you know, speak to as many people as you can. Don't be afraid to do that, because we're all working, you know, together and hoping to sort of help one another through the journey in your career. So yeah, I think being proactive is definitely something I would advise.
Yeah, a really good piece of advice there, Becky. Absolutely. So kind of summarising that, it's find a specialism. So find a niche, find something that differentiates you from others, and get really good at it to that point. But also take those opportunities that come your way. Do that bit extra. Develop yourself, continuously improve. Because that creates opportunities in itself, and you will develop as a result, and you will enrich your career and also your life as a result. And I think that's, again, you know, the thing from both of you there. That's kind of the end to the questions, and I just want to say a massive thank you to you both for spending the time to do this. It's actually been quite, because I know I know of you both. I don't know you brilliantly, but it's been really fantastic to get an insight into what you both do, but also you personally as people and what motivates you, and it's just great to see that two young people in financial services have kind of forged a career for themselves in something that's really interesting and that you're passionate about. And that's great. And people watching, you can have that as well. If you know Matt and Becky have got that, you can have that. I know this sounds really cheesy and corny, but you know you can, if you want it, you can achieve it. So thank you both so much, and really appreciate you taking the time to do this for us. And we hope that those of you watching have found this useful. Thanks very much.
Thank you.